So I chose to do my project on ESPN. It all started in 1979, and their headquarters is in Bristol, Connecticut, and ESPN meaning Entertainment and Sports Programming Network. And this changed the way we view sports today, and it revolutionized TV forever. Who owned ESPN? 80% was owned by Walt Disney, 20% was owned by Hearst Communications, and it started with 1.4 million subscribers, and it only started with an investment of $1 million, which was brought in by Walt Disney at the time. SportsCenter was the first show on ESPN, and it was the first show that aired sport events 24 hours a day, and CNN followed suit right after showing news 24 hours a day. Chris Berman was the first host of SportsCenter. He was known for being the best at his job. He was very charismatic. He had different quotes, different sayings. He was a real funny guy as he was analyzing any sport event at the time. The first big break for ESPN came in 1980 when they were able to broadcast the early games of the NCAA basketball tournament. This was a huge breakthrough for ESPN at the time, so because they could broadcast these games for people to actually watch. Dick Vitale, he was the first NCAA basketball broadcaster. He is an all-around basketball icon. He was known for his witty comments during the NCAA basketball tournaments. He came up with different sayings. Again, he was very charismatic at broadcasting these games. In 1981, the NFL Draft was created, and it was a big phenomenon at the time for ESPN. It was a one-day event. It was an all-day event, which broadcasted the first 7 rounds of the NFL Draft at the time, and this created revenue for ESPN and all the sports athletes that were involved. Mel Kiper Jr. was first introduced in 1984. He became the go-to guy for the NFL Draft coverage and draft analysis. He was known for his mock drafts, which he would produce throughout the whole show and the entire NFL Draft at the time. In 2010, the NFL Draft went from a one-day event to a 3-day event. And it became a 3-day event because there was just too much to cover in one day, and it generated even more revenue for ESPN and, again, for all athletes associated on the NFL Draft at the time. In 1984, fans were only able to watch one college game weekly, which could be frustrating for anybody if you're a sports fan. And before that, most fans had to listen to their favorite team on the radio. So not being able to watch your team and just having to hear it could be frustrating as well. So this was a major breakthrough for ESPN. In 1984, the Supreme Court ruled that the NCAA could no longer monopolize the rights to negotiate contracts for college football games. This was a major breakthrough for the NCAA and ESPN at the time, because now they were able to show more college games at that time. ESPN took full advantage of the Supreme Court's ruling because ESPN started to broadcast the NCAA football games all day on Saturdays, which again created more revenue for everybody that was involved, and it gave fans the opportunity to watch multiple games rather than just one game at a time, which was a major breakthrough again for Another major breakthrough came in 1987 when ESPN secured a contract with the National Football League, and this contract was able to broadcast the 8 games during the regular season on Sundays, which was a first for any cable network at the time, which again created a lot more revenue. In 1992, ESPN launched their first national sports radio station, and the people that were involved were people doing commentary like Mike and Mike in the Morning, The Herd, and this was an all-around major breakthrough for ESPN. In 1993, ESPN2 was launched, which broadcasted all of the secondary sports. And the secondary sports that were covered were sports like the World Series of Poker, snowboarding, and eventually more NCAA games for the smaller schools for people who watch those games. In 1993, the viewership for ESPN grew to a staggering 75 million subscribers, which created an incredible amount of revenue for ESPN. And this allowed them to broadcast even more sports and bring in more broadcasters. In 1984, ABC acquired controlling interest in ESPN for $3.5 billion from Walt Disney at the time. And in 1995, Walt Disney announced that he would acquire Capital Cities and ABC for a total of $19 billion at the time. In 2016, ESPN generated 88 million subscribers, and they broadcasted it in 4 different languages, and this also produced more than 64,000 hours of programming throughout the entire platform, which came from the radio, TV, secondaries. And in 2017, ESPN reported that there was a loss of 4 million subscribers, which was a 2.2% reduction in membership. And between 2011 and 2015, ESPN reported that there was a loss. More than 7 million subscribers, which have generated more than $1 billion in revenue between that time. In 2017, ESPN terminated over 100 of their top-rated employees, and this was due to budget cuts because of the sudden loss in membership. From that 2.2 decrease, they had to let people go, and they just couldn't pay them